I'm drinking my cacao in London.
All
And
right.
where are
Got
you at?
me some. I am having a glass of water here in Komodo National Park, Indonesia.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, I'm really excited that we could figure out the easiness of having a co-hosted YouTube live. And yeah, I'm hoping that the right people find this message, and if there is the calling and the desire to join us on the journey that we're going on in France in only goodness, it's only a few weeks away. That
Right? They're
yeah,
coming up.
oh yeah. So yeah, the my desire in hosting this call with you is because we've had a few calls, is just to kind of like get to the richness of you and to get the richness of myself in like in our journeys of how we even got to kind of where we're at and how we came to be on this journey together for our retreat, and to just give a little bit of background in the next 30 minutes or so of like what this retreat is that we're offering, what it's going to look like, and the reasons that we each find it so important, like this work, this medicine, how it's changed our lives, how it's changed our paths, and giving people, a little bit of a seed to see if there's something there for them in joining us. So I think we could start with, I would love for you to start and tell us a little bit about your journey. And I just want to say to those watching, Ali is new to this channel. You've seen my face a lot. But Ali is, definitely a feminine force, and in some ways, like connected to the dark feminine force in the world that has inspired me since I met her in very odd ways a few years ago. But who closely works with the world of shadow and mystery and the challenges and the kind of the upheavals of the darker aspects of self, and really like bringing them to light and giving them space. And so I am very fortunate to be working with her and creating with her on a retreat in France in the next few weeks. And so we're giving this space to share what that offering is going to be like. And so, yeah, I just want to start out in like honoring Allie's path and her story, and to give you guys a little bit of an idea of who she is and what she has to offer. And then I'll share a bit more about my story as well. But yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Allie or Allison, and ironically, Allison means the daughter of truth in Greek. And what's interesting is that there's a intense potency in this name. And I feel like that my life has been a journey into understanding my own truth and what truth means. Um, it's really interesting. I remember very, very strongly as a child, I had dreams almost every night of dying. I would and I was different people in my dreams. I was old, young, I was different races and different genders. And then I would die. And then the next day, I would be like asking people about these dreams, and like I would be describing these lives in different bodies with different skin and having different anatomy. And people really were very like upset and concerned by these dreams I was telling about. And I often got, reflected that I wasn't telling the truth. What was really honest or strange for me is that I actually really struggled because I saw a lot of adults. Clarissa says she's trying to get in. She's having problems.
She's what?
So, Clarissa, someone is trying to join the call, just sent me a message saying that she is not um, able to get in. So, I am just going to highlight the last message that you sent me, correct? That is the correct one for people to join, or is that the one for me to join?
That's the one for you to. There's a link before that. And thank you for doing that, because I'm on my phone, I can't see chats. So that's awesome that you.
Right. Yeah, let's see. I'm just trying to figure out and see.
And while you're figuring that out, I also want to just say a little bit for those that are tuning in and that are watching, so you have an idea of what we're talking about here. Ali and I are going to be co-hosting a retreat in France, September the 23rd through October the 1st. That is a silence, like meditative retreat, but with sound and music and dance. in a sense that we're not going to be speaking with our words. As facilitators, we are, but as guests, we aren't. And we go into really looking at a very beautiful ego death ritual through animal medicine, and then also integrating that with meditative practices each day, yoga practices each day, dance facilitation, and different ways to really be in the body. So we're not ignoring the body the way that we might do in Vipassana. We're giving ourselves some nourishment for the body while we really sit with the death of certain aspects of ourselves. So as Ali speaks a bit about death, then you might understand why she's bringing this into the room, and while I'll be talking about it as well. How you doing, Ali?
I'm I am struggling. She is saying that she is using the link that I added and that it's not working for her, and so I'm trying to. I just sent her the same one again, but she says this is the one she's using, so
So what she do
I
to
don't know
let
what to do.
tell her to go to my YouTube channel, just to go to my YouTube channel, and this should be streaming on YouTube. So anybody that
And
writes
our echo.
our and she'll know my because she's also part of
All right, thanks for your patience, everyone. Just want to make sure everybody can be here who wants to be here.
it. Yeah, and it was recorded, so whatever she misses, we can send her the recording as well.
Great. Okay. Perfect. All right. Here we are. So what I was sharing was that I remembered as a child noticing how many adults would say one thing, but I could tell that they weren't telling the truth. Right? There was this conditioning that was causing people to behave one way and speak another. And I remember being so confused by this as a child. Like, I didn't understand it. It seemed so obvious to me that they weren't telling the truth. But then the other adult in the room would just go along with whatever it was they were saying, pretending like that they believed what the person was saying. And so I was watching these spirals of untruths kind of expand. And I really found myself feeling disconnected. I didn't understand how to be a human. And and so I tried it on. I tried doing what they would do, of like saying one thing or saying what I thought was supposed to be said, and I really exhausted myself in trying to live with this conditioning and this tendency in our culture to not tell the truth. And this led me to really have an inner battle in my own heart because I love the truth. I consider it my love language, of really being able to share and speak truth. But because I didn't quite figure out how to have my niche in our world, I found myself feeling really depressed and
Mhm.
anxious and disconnected. I didn't know how to play the game of being human. I didn't know how to be here in this world. And I have a very brilliant and active mind, and it was just spinning. It was spinning, and became incessant, and I didn't understand. I just didn't know how to land. I didn't know how to stop the incessant thoughts and the analysis of, like, wait a minute, they're not telling the truth, but anyway, I was just going around in circles and making myself miserable, and then honestly making myself sick. And I was always such a beautiful, bright light and had so much love in my heart. But I really brought myself to the point of no longer wanting to be here on planet Earth. I was struggling to the point where I just couldn't find my place. And that was a really, really humbling experience to look around and see that my life was beautiful. I was healthy, more or less. I have I'm healthy, I'm attractive, I'm smart, I'm successful, I'm privileged. Why was I suffering so? And so when I realized there was this deep suffering inside me, I had the amazing ability to really dive into this. I used it as a bell of awareness to really dive in. And even though I had used all sorts of different tools in the past to try to work with my depression, when I really kind of came to plant medicines and silent meditation, it really gave me so much insight into the patterns in the mind that cause this, in a way, this form of insanity, where I no longer want to have this beautiful experience of life. And so long periods of silent meditation absolutely changed my life. Truly. I was living my backup plan and I had quit. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't live my backup plan. Even though my backup plan was many people's dream, it wasn't my dream. And being able to take a pause in between careers and to be able to really go within, I realized that silent meditation is really like rehab for Overthinkers Anonymous. And I had to admit and acknowledge that I didn't know how to rest in my own mind. It was a constant dialogue and a constant and oftentimes a battle that was exhausting and caused a lot of tension. And after my first silent meditation retreat, which I was so scared to go to, honestly, Echo, like I was so afraid to go to my first one. I was like, 9 days without talking? Are you kidding? Like, like I love to talk, and like I've never even gone a day really without like a total silence except when I'm in nature. And so I was scared. I was scared about sitting still for so long. I was scared I wouldn't be able to do it. It was definitely, I had a lot of fears and apprehensions, but after the first one, I felt like I finally learned that there was an on off switch to my mind and a volume button. And it changed everything. It truly changed everything for me once I could learn to actually rest, to truly rest the mind, to rest the body. And it changed every aspect of my life. It changed the way I did yoga. It changed the way I worked in nature. It changed the way I gardened. It changed the way I wrote and sang and made music. Everything shifted once I really came home inside myself and found this deeper like peace. And I was so shocked because I always thought meditation was sort of boring, and I had the excuse that, oh well, I walk in nature or I dance or I journal. I had all these other like mindfulness techniques, but when I really came to silent meditation, I was absolutely in awe of the impact and the shift that it had for me. And so now, many years later, here I am, and I teach meditation and I support others and finding this peace inside themselves. Many say that we teach what we need to learn the most. And I agree. In a way, like it's true. I really did need some help in this area. And I'm so grateful that I found it. And once I found that, honestly, what else could I do with my life force energy but to share that with others, to help others find that peace within themselves that I was able to find. And the combination of using plant medicines along with silent meditation is another just absolutely astounding revelation that helped me cut through, I think, years of confusion. It's an accelerated path. It truly is. It's a very accelerated path. It basically turns the knob up quite a bit. But it also, like coming around full circle, allowed me to become so honest with myself, like truly listen to myself so that I could really, really feel anytime I was out of integrity with myself, out of integrity with others, there was this new simplicity because I could feel the truth of my own heart, my own yes, my own no, what I really wanted to do with my life force, what I really wanted to do with my life, the people I truly wanted to be around, and those relationships that weren't serving me. I suddenly, honesty was so bright. There was really no other way. And I'm so grateful for that because it really is so much simpler to just be absolutely transparent and absolutely clear. And I believe that's actually all of our natures. I think deep down, our nature is this clear, transparent, radiant, vibrant life force.
Mm.
And so for me, the combination of the activity, the activities and the tools that we're offering in the course that we're doing in a few weeks, in the retreat, is in a way the distilled gems, like the nuggets that I have found over 30 years of my own personal walk through depression, suicidal ideation, anxiety, and like my sort of tagline I like to say is from depression to devotion, from anxious to aligned, and from suicidal to sublime.
Mm.
And these are the tools. Like, really, this is my palette of the tools that I use to help me create that inner alchemy. And so it's really just what else is there to do, right? Really, what else is there to do but to share this truth and to live in alignment with the truth that I am, and help other people find it within themselves. It's a really profound honor to be here and to have you joining me on this retreat. I knew that the balance of the meditation and the yoga is just so essential, and the ecstatic dance. And I just so respect and admire your work in the world, and you as a yoga and yoga teacher and DJ, and just all the amazing things that you do. And so it's really just such a beautiful synergy to lean into this, being to spend these 9 days with you, and really share our medicine together. So I'm really grateful.
Mm. Wow, so many nuggets in there, and I want to just repeat it for myself: from anxious to aligned, from suicidal to sublime, and which was the other one?
From depression to devotion.
I want I would love if you could send me those 3 lines because this
Yeah.
is potent, and I wanna add this as well to the YouTube description because I feel like so many of us will be able to relate to that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, thank you for sharing, and there's so much in that that I can relate to as I begin to share a bit of myself, and I just wanna first say I feel so grateful in my life to be attracting frequencies such as yourself in my circle, and you and I haven't got to spend a lot of time together. But there's like such a deep tethering, like a very beautiful tethering to the work that we do in the world that I can just feel through you and the authenticity. And I love that what you spoke about your name being like the teller of truth and of recognizing that as a child, the patternicity of how people are relating, because I can relate to that. I felt very confused as a child with what I was experiencing in my own internal world and what I was sensing in the external world. And I just feel grateful, even as co host, to continue to get to know you even deeper because there's something so beautiful about collaboration and polarities, but also in the similarities. And I feel like I have a sister in you, and I think that that's also what's beautiful about you as a medicine woman and what you bring to the world is in your transparency and being that speaker of truth. I think people just feel safe around you,
Mm.
at least from what I've experienced in the ceremony that we sat together and the bit of time that we've had together. You're direct, and like I can see like you're blunt, say what you need, and like you just out. But there's a safety in that for me because I'm the same way, and it's not for everyone. People that are still in those veils and fully speaking, will see it as like you have too many needs or you're too aggressive or you're too this. And what I love is I actually feel safe in that. So when I'm around you, I know that what you say, what you speak is your truth, and it's not going to go under the carpet and unseen. And so that feels safe for me. It's like, okay, I know what I'm going to get because what I'm going to get is what's in front of me. And so, yeah. So just thank you for sharing your
Mm.
medicine, for being here. Yeah. And whew. And yeah, now as I share a bit of my story, I'm just so excited to be together, September 23rd through October 1st. Like I'm looking forward to it. And I also have that anxiousness in myself of we're also there. And even though we're facilitating and we're going to be speaking and leading through, there will be long moments of silence and we will be sitting in our own processes and before after working with the medicine as well with ourselves and facing those like ego death spaces. And so we're in it too, like we're right in that field with everyone else, and I've got stuff to sit with. And so this is the beauty of going through these processes and these ceremonies together, is like cleansing our field to with ourselves so that when we're in relationship to other, that we can show up in integrity, show up in transparency. And yeah, what you said about Vipassana, about silent retreat, I remember the first one that I did as well. I had so much fear. I had people say, Echo, you talk so much. You're not going to be able to do it. Like, what are you going to do if I felt a little judged. I felt a little judged of like, oh, people don't believe that I have the capacity to do this. And then I started to doubt myself and I was like, you aren't going to be able to shut up for 9 days. Like, how are you going to do that? And what I found was the silence was the easiest part. The silence
Oh,
was sublime. It really was sublime. And it wasn't easy in the sense of like all your shit comes up, like all my stuff. Like you said, it's like when you go on this path, when you start working with the medicine, it's like something in your system keeps you in check. And as I sat there in silence, all my came up and it was like, life, self, source, whatever you want to call it, all of it merging together, being like, look, this is the stuff you need to work on. Like, you need to get real honest with yourself. You've got like attachment issues, you've got some trauma bonds, you've got some wounds that you need to look at. And it was like being sat down in the most loving way possible, but all of my stuff just like put out onto the table. And I had all this homework. So it was like, all right, Echo, like you've got 9 days to like make a game plan of what you're going to do to work on all of this stuff, but you got to work on it because now that you've seen it, You can't unsee it. But the part that was challenging for me was I couldn't move my body. I couldn't go on runs. I couldn't work out. I had to sit in meditation for so many hours a day. I couldn't write. I couldn't read. And that part infuriated the body. Like my body felt abandoned by me. It felt rejected. It was like my mind and I were an ally ship and I was breathing and it was
Mhm.
trying to come into connection, but my body was at the end like screaming. And what I love about this creation is that you've designed it in a way where we're like caring for the bodies and I get to lead us through dance and through these cathartic releases without words where we can move and we can do yoga and we can nourish the bodies and we can go into the sauna and we can be in heat and we can go for walks and nourish ourselves in that way. And so that helps the part of me, the physical body, like release a little bit and say, okay, I'm safe too, like I'm considered. And that feels really important. And the death piece, it doesn't surpass me of like the similarities in our stories. And we're still, for all of you that are watching and those of you that will go on the journey with us, we're still uncovering like how life brought us together and why it brought us together and in the strange circumstances that it brought us together. But when I think about what you said about truth, we came together through finding ourselves in a truth, but it came from, a deceit from someone else. And so I
Mm.
think it's even more beautiful that in our intuition and in our inner guidance, somehow we found each other amongst this deception that came towards us. And we found sisterhood in that when many people could actually be driven away from that because there was pain connected to that deception and somehow it was like, wow, you're a sister in this. Like we felt the same deception, we felt the same pain.
Mm.
And so I see such beauty in how we came together. And in my connection to death, you're much further on your path of knowing and having the wisdom and insight how to work with death, being a death doula and helping people through these transitions. And I'm still learning in my journey of how that can be useful for other people because what has come up for me is that I've just been there for so many deaths. I've watched many of my family members die. By the time I was 11, my first three boyfriends died in motorcycle accidents, and many of my friends passed through extreme sports. And I got to very early on in my life because of that come to know what death is and what loss is and to grieve that. And it's been a very individual journey, very insular. And only in the recent years is death starting to whisper to me, especially now that I'm working with medicine and that I am sitting in these spaces of silence and ceremony. It's starting to whisper, now is the time to be in service. But for so long, it was about me understanding my own fear of death and my own resistance to even contemplating my own death. And just this year, I sat in a silent death and dying retreat and became very good friends with a Buddhist nun who I'm starting to collaborate with. And through her directness and her bluntness and her truth telling, when she didn't sugarcoat things, she very much gave us the contemplation of it's not, if you're going to die, you are going to die. You are absolutely going to die and how are you going to meet that, in the face of death? Because in life, we are amidst death. It's there, it's with us consistently. And we can have our coping mechanisms and our veils of resistance to speaking about the elephant in the room, but it's there. And what I'm so excited about being a steward of and like in service of is working with people like yourself and creating containers like this where in a loving way we're giving people an opportunity to sit with a very uncomfortable topic that has a stigma around it but in the most nourishing way and we're saying
Mm.
I'm with you. This isn't easy. I've been there. I've had my resistance, but I want you to be prepared for the inevitable. And I want you to love life even more and to have even more compassion for yourself for every moment that you have. Because as this approaches and when it's near, I want you to be prepared and to have the tools and the resources. And so
Mhm.
that's what this is to me is we're creating this wonderfully deep container where we nourish our bodies, we nourish our minds, but we also come into contact with the death of the ego in a sense, in many ways, and death of parts of ourselves that that fear and that have resistance, so that when the challenges do come, that we're a bit more adaptable and more resilient to what life, gives to us. And so
Mm.
still learning and still a shadow dancer, and on this path of becoming an ally to death, of it becoming, it's, I feel like it's more closer to me than it's ever been in my life, and it's almost like it sits on my right shoulder and with me daily, and I'm learning to like love it and befriend it and not be scared of it, because I'm like, oh, you're just a little too close, like, can you move away? It's like, okay, how do I nurture this relationship, and also how am I in service of it to others? So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So much potent medicine in all of that. Um, and you said something like so perfect about it, death kind of being right on your shoulder. Before I dive into responding to that, though, somebody asked here on the chat when the retreat is, and so the retreat and where it is. So it's September the 23rd through October the 1st, and it's in France. The nearest airport is, I'm not French, pardon me. It's Limoge, so maybe that's Limoges, and Perejou is an hour and 15 minutes away. So it's in like South Central France. That's about 5 hours south of Paris, in a beautiful, beautiful natural setting. It's going to be a really sweet site. So that is when and where it is. And you can also find all that info on the website, EntheoGem.one, EntheoGem.one. And so just, yeah, to those requesting information, I'll just plug that in there for a moment. And then, yeah, I wanted to speak because some people are a little confused, like, EntheoGem, polishing our precious gem, a silent meditation retreat, a plant medicine retreat. Where is death in this? Like, what does this have to do with it? And what I've realized in this journey of truth is that is the ultimate truth. And so many of us, I often describe it that death is just right here behind our shoulders, right? And we don't want to look. We don't want to look right here. We don't want to turn around and see it. We don't want to. And so as a culture, we try to ignore it. And when we look in the mirror and we start to see the wrinkles and the grays and we start to see the changes, then we do everything we can to slow it. We dye the grays. We use all sorts of serums and tonics, or even to using cosmetic surgery in order to hide this, to hide the fact to ourselves and to everyone else that we're getting older. And it's just one of the ways that we are in denial, which is a form of untruth. And what's so fascinating is that we walk through our whole lives feeling like death is right here and afraid of this. And so I realized that a lot of the source of our anxiety and our fear, the greatest, all fears, ultimately come to the fear of death, which is the ultimate loss of control. And the greatest surrender is when we surrender the body and trust what is beyond, right? To the great mystery. And so what's fascinating is you say now it's on your shoulder, right? So instead of being right behind your shoulder, it's actually on your shoulder. But from this place is a really beautiful opportunity to finally start to take these little glances. And then the ultimate truth truly is looking face to face at this reality, at our death. And as many in the Eastern religions, they actually practice. They practice this art because they feel the closer we keep death to us, the actually more vital we can live our lives, the more fully we can live our lives. And I've noticed in the Western culture where we try to deny and pretend that death doesn't exist, up to the last moment, even as a hospice caregiver, someone who sits at the bedside of those who are dying, that even up to the final moments, people can often be in denial and they still won't face it. And so they're dying, never truly facing their life or facing this great mystery. It's almost like a la 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 la, like don't look, don't listen, and then it's just sort of a blind falling. And this is terrifying, really, if you think about it. This terrifying, it's a terrifying prospect. And so, actually, turning around and facing this grim reaper or this great unknown is the most terrifying thing Yet ironically, when we do turn inside, when we turn to face ourselves, we suddenly realize that we actually, in a sense, are looking behind us. And that's when our greatest jewel, our greatest treasure inside is revealed. And what is revealed is what is beyond the ego and the personality, and what's eternal, the part that doesn't die, the part that never dies. And this can't be understood theoretically. You can read all sorts of books about it. You can go to all sorts of talks about it. You can watch anything. You can fill yourself with knowledge and information. But until you experience this true turning within, this turning around and facing yourself, facing this truth, ultimately you're always going to be running. You're always going to be running and hiding from death, or hiding from this great mystery. And so when we combine, silent meditation is often considered a pathway into this. And the longer that you sit, the deeper you tend to go inside. And it can be very confronting at first. It can be scary because it feels like this wall of the end. It feels like this wall of terror and mystery. And yet with curiosity, we can gently lean into this place and realize that it's just this thin veil that actually reveals the greatest treasure. And we can feel this somatically. We don't have to believe in it. It's a felt somatic sense of home and of safety and of sanctuary, and is undeniable. And once you have discovered and felt this for yourself, you can never forget it. And it absolutely changes the way that you move through life, because you can actually move through life from a place of surrender, of sanctuary, of feeling safe, even though the world, of course, is not safe, right? And none of us are going to get out of this game alive. But when we take a look inside, we start to reveal this illusion. And then when we accelerate this with plant medicine and an ego death ritual, which is actually more aptly named like an ego reset ritual, because I want to speak to this one thing where people talk about, well, what is ego death? Like, why do we want to kill the ego? Because some philosophies and some spiritualities and some spiritual paths actually talk about killing the ego. And the ego is, in a way, like the enemy of spiritual growth. And so I want to speak to this because in my journey, I wanted to kill my ego, but really I wanted to kill my incessant mind. I wanted to kill the unaligned, the misaligned version, right? And so it's not about killing the ego. We need the ego. Like, without the ego, we couldn't function in three-dimensional reality. There's a concept about that the ego is actually a limiter, that in everything, in non-duality, in the totality of everything, if we are everything forever all at once in one moment and nothing at all forever, and if we're everything and nothing, we couldn't possibly walk down the stairs and not fall off or like run into traffic. Like, there's almost a limiter that allows us to have an individuated consciousness to navigate a body, to be inside the vehicle of a body. Our soul needs a limiter so that we can function here, and that's the ego. And so the ego is necessary, an essential part to keep us safe. And if we're lost in our minds and we're not fully present and aware, then our ego is working overtime trying to keep us safe. And so when we're trying to kill the ego, the ego is not going to like that, right? The ego is going to fight tooth and nail. But when we can invite the ego to rest and to have a reset, and like the ego gets a vacation, but the ego has to feel safe enough to trust us to let itself off the hook for a little while, because it's gotten hyper vigilant in our modern world, where there's constantly these micro threats. And so when we can reset the ego, so it's a temporary death, it resets in a much more aligned way, so that we can walk through the world present and centered and able to meet whatever comes in life, whether it be, good, bad, whatever we label as good or bad. We can meet it with this equanimity. We can realize that we are having this beautiful experience. So it's about an ego reset. And so it involves ego death, but then right on the flip side of that is the rebirth. And a metaphor that I like to use, especially it's useful in this modern culture, is if your computer is glitching, if your computer programs are not working properly and they're getting stuck and they're malfunctioning and they're shutting down and they're not working appropriately, like, what do we do? Like, the very first thing that we do is we turn it off, right? We turn off the computer and we reset it. And 99% of the time, it resets those issues. And very rarely, sometimes we still have to take it to a genius or to take it to to get fixed. But most of the time, a reset allows the system to reset and to come back on in alignment. And I have found that with both silent meditation retreats and yoga and ecstatic dance, sound baths. All of these are different tools, and especially plant and animal medicine ceremonies allow us to reset so that we can have walk in our lives with a healthy relationship with our ego. And so, yeah, so, to the ego death, people are like, all of a sudden the ego's going to pull out all of its defenses, right? All the swords and shields is going to go to war, and so and so that's why I really enjoyed the EntheoGem concept of this nourishing nectar of sanctuary to encourage the ego when it's ready to do this work of resting, to realize it doesn't have to do everything, right?
Mm.
Because the ego's exhausted. In the modern world, our egos are exhausted trying to do all these different roles for us, when really its role is to protect us and to keep us safe. And it's hypervigilant. In a way, most of our egos are living in a trauma state.
Yeah.
And so it's such an honor to be able to do this work with Echo, who is a trauma informed and certified yoga teacher. And then I also have a little background in integrating and alchemizing trauma. Here we are talking about killing the ego, which is like a traumatic experience because the ego believes in these experiences that it actually is dying.
Mhm.
Sometimes the ego, like this bit that is you, can actually believe that it is the end. And so there can be a wide range of responses to this, but it's a very, very safe sanctuary for being able to take a look at this truth, to let the ego reset so that we can live in alignment, which is the point of yoga, right? The point of yoga is alignment. And so that's what EntheoGem is about, is when we can return to alignment with ourselves and allow the ego to soften its hypervigilance and like create its right role as our divine protectors, then that's when it will open and reveal the hidden treasures within. But the ego is protecting it from us until we're ready. The
Yeah.
ego is protecting this gem, this precious gem, from our own minds, from our own neuroses, from our own like fear of scarcity and greed, because we might misuse this precious treasure. And so when we come into alignment, then the ego can soften and trust us. And that's when this precious treasure can be revealed. And so that's what EntheoGem is about. It's a 9-day silent meditation and medicine retreat, carefully curated to create sanctuary, a reset, a true reset, a tech reset, where we're going to ask you to absolutely clear your schedules and ideally surrender your phones, at least turn them off. And I promise to turn them off, but I recommend that you like actually give
No
yourself a
phone.
break. Actually give yourself a break, surrender your phone, and actually let yourself be present and kind of revel and indulge yourself in the sanctuary. Because like what Echo said before, we were both so scared of silence. Both of us were like, oh my God, how in the world could we ever sit in silence for so long? And ironically, I found it to be the most nourishing, sublime nectar. I couldn't believe that it was the thing I'd actually been longing for, was to be actually able to just sit and be and not have to make small talk and not have to tell somebody else who I am or where I'm from or what I do, or not just to be with myself and let myself rest,
Yeah.
and in a way have that deep internal silent conversation with ourselves until our inner mind and our critic and our an analyst and our sportscaster, all those different parts, finally feel heard. When we listen to ourselves, they've been trying to get our attention, which is why a lot of the neuroses and trauma responses happen. Is that we've been trying so hard to like solve ourselves and to cure ourselves from the outside in. When we come inside, we suddenly realize that we just really wanted to listen to ourselves truly without any distractions. And we might have a lot of things to say. There could be a lot, it could be bottled up. But after a few days, that settles and it clears out, and then we can really rest in the sweet sublime sanctuary of silence. um,
Mm.
so yeah, that is why we are doing what we're doing.
There's a reference, like when you talked about the limiter, I was thinking as a DJ, like when we're playing music out to the audience, there is a limiter on the master audio that goes out over the stereos. And if you go too far, it goes into the red and it clips and it's like very uncomfortable for the ears. And so I was thinking this metaphor of when we are like limited in the human capacity, basically to, put all of life into this one human form, or at least a piece of it, it's giving us the opportunity, like, because when we just expand so big, it can be like, "What?" It's so much information. And I know for myself in ceremony, when I sit with this medicine, when I first started working with it, it felt as if I was feeling every single thing that could ever be felt by the human experience as I took the medicine in. And it felt like, oh my God, if I feel anything else, I'm just going to explode. And when you come back, it's so beautiful because in the journey, I feel like as you're coming back into containment, into your human form, it's like you're putting everything in that limit and it's just enough. It's almost like it's just enough. It's not too warm, it's not too cold, and you're so grateful to come back into this human form. And just like you said, it's like when you go through that ego reset, it really changes your perspective on life. And say a few things about what you shared, and I think we'll have about like 5 more minutes here, and we can do a little closing after that. But yeah, it's something that I live by is like living by a question, like really living by a question. And my question being, I ask myself, am I leaving things better than I found them? So in every relationship that I'm in every situation, I ask myself if I'm leaving things better than I found them, and is this a path of love? Like, is the way that I'm living a path of love? And so when I've gone through those rituals and just been obliterated into sentience and just merged with, oneness, which is so beautiful, but I come back and I realize like this is temporary. I only get to wear this body. I only get to be in this experience for a certain amount of time. And it's not even guaranteed that I get to age. So many of us, like you were saying, we see the gray hairs, we see the wrinkles, but there's a deep knowing in me, like I might not make it that long. My body is fragile. We're all very fragile yet resilient, but anything can happen. I can walk onto the street and something spontaneous can take me out in that moment at 39 in a healthy body. And so, what I've learned from those rituals is that nothing is guaranteed. And mostly, when people pass, it isn't expected. Not all of us, are informed that there is a sickness in our body and that we have 6 months to live, which in some ways is such a blessing for unfinished business. For most of us, it comes very quickly, and we're not ready to face it yet, like to have it out in front of us. And so, what I've learned is that every moment, it's not that it's borrowed time, but it's so precious, and it's like am I those two questions that I live by, am I leaving things better than I found them? And is this a path of love? And it keeps me from putting myself in such unhealthy situations and wasting my time because I realize how
Mhm.
precious it really is. And I want each moment to be I'm doing what I can to make my little world a better place, the little bubble that's around me. And so yeah, it's interesting and also working with this kind of medicine and going through such profound, experiences, like, so quickly that when you come back, like, the mundane is actually quite extraordinary. You find a lot of beauty in, like, sweeping your house and, like, washing your dishes and stuff that I used to feel like I don't have time for because I want a life of adventure and I wanna be taking in so many experiences. Now I have such an appreciation for the little nuances of my life, and I care more for my environment. I care for my home. I care for more for my things that I do keep, and I also release things a lot more. Like I realize how futile many things are that used to be such a big deal. It's like when you face death and when you actually experience it on your shoulder or sitting right in front of you, that fight that you're having or that disagreement that you're having with somebody, you realize actually I don't really care about that fight. I want to bridge back to love and connection with you because if this is our last moment, I don't want to leave it in such disharmony. And so I clean up my messes more now and I close
Mhm.
my circles more. When I'm in relationship, I have those difficult conversations and I speak my truth because I really do feel when I'm saying goodbye to somebody on a trip or a journey, it could be goodbye. And I don't
Yeah.
want in my last moments have all these, oh, what if I did this or what if I did that? I feel that in facing my death and writing my will out and having a plan for what happens after death and where my resources go and where my things go, I feel settled in myself to know that the people I love are cared for when I leave this life, that my resources that I worked to create and accumulate go to places that will nourish them and that will help others, and that I don't leave messes in my relationships anymore and in my world, because when I go, I also am caring for the fact that I don't want anyone to have guilt or have any pain for the things that weren't said. And I can't make people close their side with me or to close their circles, but I say what I need to say in love, and I clean up my messes so that when I leave, I that person knows, like, I love
Mm,
you, I release that. And yeah, so I become a less messy human by going through things like this. And we could choose vacations and holidays, or we could go sit on the beach and surf and drink mai tais, and that's beautiful. But how beautiful to spend time to, like, go on a 9-day silent retreat to nourish the most challenging thing for so many of us in the world in facing our own death, our own dissolution, but also with so much nourishment and coming out of it with the sublime feeling of, I can face anything. If I can face this, the ultimate truth, I can literally face anything. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's true. It is, yeah, it is the soul warrior's path. It's the path of courage, and yeah, and yeah, thank you for sharing all that, because it's true, right? They say, like, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Hmm.
And when we have this remembrance, we don't take any moment for granted. And
Yeah.
I think so many of us, we do. You know, I even find myself sometimes, taking for granted this life. And I love this practice for reminding me what's important and how precious each moment is, and how precious this being in this body, being alive, is what a precious gift it is. So, hence the name EntheoGem, so that we can, because EntheoGen, you may have heard of the word EntheoGen with an N, actually means, in if you take out the etymology of it, the etymology, not the entomology, sorry, that's insects, but the etymology, entheogen means to generate the divine within. So it's practices that we utilize to help feel our connection to the divine within ourselves. And oftentimes, entheogens have been associated with psychedelics. It's sort of become a new name for the word psychedelic, which means to, like, manifest in the mind. And so it's sort of to point to, like, a greater possibility, that it's not just about the endless wanderings and the meanderings of the mind, but it's actually about creating this connection to love, to the divine, to whatever we describe this great mystery as. And when we feel connected to the divine, then we tend to walk through life with a lot more compassion and patience and presence, and in a way are a lot more efficient. What I found is that when I've been sitting a lot and when I do a retreat like this, I think, oh, I don't have time for a 9-day retreat. I'm too busy. But I
Mhm.
found that I am so much more effective and efficient. I'm so much more listening to my true wants. I'm not spending so much time, like, spinning around trying to figure things out with my mind, that I actually feel like I actually gain time when
Mhm.
I take time out to do this work. That's the beautiful paradox of it. And so, yeah, I realized it's that, yeah, it's so much more alignment. And so there's so much more ease. So each moment I'm getting more done, and with more ease, when I have taken this time for myself. And so, which is why we're offering this. Like, because really it's like, to create this space, it's such a gift, it's such an honor, but it's really, it's the retreat that I want to go on. It's the retreat that I've always wanted to participate in, but it doesn't exist. I can go and do a medicine retreat, and I can go do a silent meditation retreat, and so I oftentimes would combine it on my own. And then, of course, I love ecstatic dance, and I love all of these different individual pieces, but for me, this is what I've always, this is like the, yeah, this is the culmination of all the different tools that I want to bring to my own, self care practice, my own embodiment practice, and, in a way, my own commitment to myself and
Mhm.
to everyone around me. I feel like I'm a much kinder, more patient, loving, and compassionate person, and when I do this work. And so then it's like life becomes a vacation, instead of, like, just having to go take this vacation and, do all the things to distract ourselves to feel better. It's like I do the work so that my life, I don't need a vacation from my life anymore. It actually feels like a gift. And that is precious. It's priceless, right? It's priceless. And
I was
so,
really just gonna say that. I love that you said that, because then, like, your little life, on a street in London becomes to vacation, and sweeping your floors and like waking up and doing your things, it becomes a vacation and your whole perspective on life changes. I love that you said that.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's getting down to the wire now, right? It's only in 3 weeks, and it's a lot to try to clear your schedule for that much time. So I understand it's a lot. But if you feel the call, if this has touched you, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need this or want this, we do have a couple spaces left. It's going to be a really sweet, intimate group. We wanted to keep it nice and small and intimate. This is the first time a course like this has truly been offered that I know of. There's a couple other different kind of formats in Mexico and things like that, but this is a really cutting edge technology, and it's a really profound opportunity. So if you feel the call and you'd like to talk to us more, feel free to go to the website, EntheoGem.one, and send us a message. We can set up a time to talk, to call, and yeah, to find out if it's right for you or not. And if it's not, then great. We're gonna enjoy it being there. I'm so excited to be there with you, Echo. It's gonna be so sweet to get this time to dive deep, and I'm so excited for the souls who have felt the call. Their yeses have been so enthusiastic. It's amazing. Like truly, their responses are like, "I had a dream that I was meant to come. Like I didn't really want to do a silent meditation retreat, but I heard about it, and I just like my whole soul said, yes, you have to do this." So it's been a really beautiful process witnessing people's like intuitive yeses. And I'm excited to see where this can go. But I'm really excited for our time together soon. So um,
Thank
yeah,
you.
we welcome you if you feel the call.
Yeah, and I'll post the website in the subtitles as well, so that you guys have the information. And like Ali said, like you can reach out to her or me. I'll put our socials in the description as well, so that you can contact her and you can contact me. And I also want to state that for those that aren't ready to specifically receive, the medicine is also just being in the presence of it and being in the
Yeah.
space retreat. And so you are more than welcome to reach out if you're just looking for 9 days of silence and of that dance and yoga and meditation, and you're not yet ready to sit in ritual with, a plant or animal medicine. You're still welcome. And so if you feel the call, reach out to us. And being in the teachings and the offerings around connection to death and transition will be extremely profound in its own essence. So do feel free to reach out about that. And I'm
And
excited.
also, and also on that note, Echo, just to speak to also, I know this is a lot, and 9 days is a lot, and we've tried to make it as affordable as possible. 9 days of accommodations, food, activity, all the course material. It's actually really quite conservative. But if anyone really feels the call to come, but they do not have the resources for it, please reach out. We're trying our best to create a way for anyone who feels the call to be able to come. And also, here for this first one, because we are creating an intimate container, there have been a few folks who have been like, I really want to come, but I really think I can only get away for 7 days. So if for some reason you want to create a modified experience, feel free to reach out. Like we can get creative. If this is bubbling up for you, then, and this, I believe this is probably the most important work we can do as a human being. It is our humble honor to try and make a way for you that works for us and for you. So just be in touch if you're curious.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's for those of you that stayed for the entire video, bravo. And I hope that you got some seeds of insight here. And then if you don't join us, that you go on your own journey of connecting with these teachings, and that you reach out. And maybe if you don't make it in time for this certain retreat when you're watching this video, reach out, because Ali and I do have the desire to bring this to other places in the world. And it's just the beginning. So definitely stay tuned, stay connected with both of us, and let the magic unfold. When you receive the calling, reach out. And yeah, so grateful to be on this path. So thank you.
Great.
Mwah.
Thank you.
Yes. Ciao.
Says it's still going. I'm gonna click out.